I can give you anything, just tell me what you want. A house, a car, a planet or two, a mighty ship with a sailing crew. All you have to do is ask. I can give you anything, just tell me what you want. China, crystal, Fabergé eggs, your own private island, a canary that sings, a first-class ticket to the stars and the moon. All you have to do is ask.
Everything in life is a riddle. We each glimpse faces, places, fragments of truth. Our lives are shaped by how we piece them together.
Dear reader, if you find this manuscript while I yet live, return it to me in person. Tell no one of its existence, and you shall be well rewarded. If, as I hope, I am long dead, bring it to any publisher, and your reward may be greater still. Yours faithfully, Charles Dickens, the 15th of March, 1858. My name is Cedric Skenshall, and I was born in the town of Rochester in the county of Kent, in a great dark house which perched like a raven on the brow of a hill, frowning down on the city below. Upon the vast oak door in the house was an ancient and fanciful knocker, which gripped my childish imagination as surely as the claws of that old rook. It showed a great fish or sea serpent curving down to swallow a rival's tail. But all of that was years ago, and now, like my old friend the sea serpent, I have returned to devour my rival's tail by telling a new tale of a man, of madness, and of murder. I had left my humble beginnings far behind and was enjoying a new life in London, writing about the great men of Parliament for the Daily Sketch. I had a fine new home and completed this scene of prosperity by taking to wife one Maud Abercrombie. All went well. At work, I busied myself in the recording of speeches on the want of thrift among the poor, the need to extend our empire to the heathen, and the importance of the monarchy in the very fabric of our lives. One day, while transcribing a minister's pronouncements on the need to set an example to the deserving poor by publicly flogging those who proved ungrateful to their betters, I felt moved to inquire if the minister himself had ever experienced hunger, or indeed the want of any material thing that might cause him to question the proper order of the world. He gave me a quizzical look, but no reply. Only when I repaired to my office did I discover I had been cashiered to the post of sub-editor as punishment for my intemperate outburst. When I returned home, I found the house unkept, my dinner unprepared, and my wife still in her bed. There was, she said, no point in living when her husband neglected her, pursued other women, and would surely abandon her at the earliest opportunity. Her mood was not improved by news of my disgrace at work. Over the following months, her mind became ever feebler, filled with wild allegations of infidelity or abandonment. Fearing for her sanity, I sent for her sister Alice, just 18, but of even temper and sweet nature.
whom I reasoned might cure her sister's ill humor, or at least assist in the running of the household. It was to prove a very grave mistake.
The arrival of young Alice should have been cause for celebration. She was as bright as she was beautiful, and her luster brought a new brilliance to our hitherto sad house. Yet, the brighter shone this star, the worse grew my wife. Gradually, Alice was forced to take over the running of the household, as her sister emerged less and less frequently from her bedchamber. My ignominious demotion had turned into a blessing, for it gave me time to write. Even in this, Alice proved to be a muse. When I came home, weary of currycombing the platitudes of politicians, she would become my scribe, writing out my sketches and observations as I spoke aloud. But even these pleasant interludes will be interrupted as my wife, at times quite deranged, would bawl from her bedchamber, demanding attention, assuring us that she knew of some terrible wickedness which we were visiting upon her. Indeed, upon reflection, I blame myself. But Alice proved to be all that her sister was not. Seeking to ease her torment, I had brought her a mirror of all her imperfections.
To lighten Alice's burden, I undertook to bring her to the theater. And for one evening, both of us were truly happy. But at the intermission, Alice commenced to complain of nausea. As her condition worsened, we left the theater and hailed a carriage. By the time the doctor arrived, her breathing had grown ever more shallow. Without her uttering another word, the life went out of her, so gently that it took the good doctor's sternest entreaties to convince me that the worst had come to pass. The doctor surmised that the exertions of caring for her sister had hastened her end, but opined that only a full post-mortem study would bear out his belief. I would not hear of it. Alice lay there, still warm, still perfect in form, like an angel fallen to earth. To mar this perfection with a surgeon's knife was unthinkable. I slowly began to ascend the staircase. Something my wife had said the previous evening, when I announced my theater engagement, had gnawed at my mind like the rats in the wainscot of my cold childhood home. In my heart, I knew that the thing which had halted Alice's too good heart lay not among the fates, nor in her constitution, but in the terrible deed of a mad woman, who even then lay gibbering and cursing in our marriage bed.
When I confronted my wife, she confessed silently. She reached under her pillow and gave me a small vial with a glass dropper. It was some tincture given to her nurse, with strict instructions to take only one drop in extremis. The bottle was empty. As the enormity of her act brought its weight down upon her already enfeebled mind, she became a child, gibbering and crying of a hangman who stood by her bed. For a moment, I also became that executioner, as I prepared to snuff out that sorry half-life that had robbed me of all happiness. But as I held the pillow above her, my anger dissolved, though I loathed her for her unspeakable act. It was plain. She had long since left that bourne in which we can be judged for our actions by anyone other than God. Then, like a lamp coming on in an empty attic, a new fear insinuated itself in my mind. If the truth should come out, would a jury be so lenient? Was it not more likely they would see only the crime and hang the poor wretch, or incarcerate her forever in some cell in Bedlam? the truth would not bring Alice back. I resolved to ensure that Alice was buried with her secret, which I, in turn, would take to my grave. At first, I had the excuse of grief to cloak my unwillingness to dwell on the death or on my wife's affliction. Then came a knock at the door. Such a knock as I had not heard since the day Ezekiel Grosspiter breathed his last rattling gasp in the silence of my childhood home. Just such a knock came to my London home that night as Alice lay cold. I steadied my hand sufficiently to unbolt the great door, the servants having retired, and on this occasion there was a presence. A constable, clad in a dark cape that shimmered in the rain, stood there, saying not a word, staring at me, with eyes that burned in a florid face like coals in a sea of ash. This, I discovered by degrees, was Constable Frederick, sent to investigate Alice's untimely death. Constable Frederick wasted but little time in examining her, then asked to be shown straight to her room, where he requested solitude. For me, the seconds dragged like weeks and minutes turned to years as I waited and fretted by the fire in the drawing room. When, after what seemed an impossible time, he had not reappeared, I retraced my steps to Alice's chamber, but found it empty. Immediately, my heart turned to ice, and I hastened to the one room where I most dreaded his presence. There, by my wife's bedside, holding her hand like a long-lost relative, sat Constable Frederick. One look at the dancing fire in his eyes, and the cruel smile that flickered beneath them told me all I feared to know. Immediately, and with the manner of a man conducting familiar business, the constable invited me to join him in my own drawing room. There, over a glass of my best port, he outlined my options in the starkest of terms. Either I could face a turn in court for attempting to conceal Alice's murder, facing the certain incarceration of my wife for that crime, and the equally certain ruin of my career, or, for the consideration of £300, I could be assured of his silence. Such a sum, though not readily available, was not beyond my means to garner, and with my assurance that the money would be his in 1 week, he left, with as little emotion as if he had solved the theft of a penny loaf. As he went, I felt the door close not just on my unwelcome visitor, but on some better part of my old self. Oftentimes, success and failure are like that brass-knocker sea serpent, eagerly devouring a rival's tail. They arrive together, like Siamese twins. In my case, the truth of my pen became my success, but my well-intentioned lie multiplied like cholera in the streets as I walked at night in search of inspiration or escape. Yet all this time, I wrote of what I saw around me. Humorous stories of bloated merchants, addled nurses, corrupt politicians, scrivening clerks, and vile lawyers. And the world recognized them and laughed. And the more they laughed, the more they flocked to my tales. Each year I grew in celebrity. Each year I grew more secure in my finances. And each year the marrow of my soul shriveled and withered, hidden like a crab beneath the shell of my success. And every year, on the same night as that first fateful knock on my door, came a visit from my nemesis. Just as I had grown in fame, so the corrupt Constable Frederick had grown sleek and fat on my bribes. And I would wager on those of a good many like me. Each year, he promised a final settlement of accounts, and each year he would return with a demand for more. blessed relief as the black night of death finally carried off my wife, without her ever, for one moment, regaining control of her so damaged faculties. Then it seemed for a second that the pall of my misery was lifted, for surely, with the cause of my secrecy gone, not even the bloated leech that had fed on me so well and so long would be able to continue his feasting. In latter years, to preempt his suspicious visits to my home, I would arrange with a local publican, a shrewd man, who knew how to close his mouth for a shilling and keep it closed to have access to his silent hostelry in the hours of darkness. He assumed I knew that this was for some furtive carnal assignation that did not befit a celebrated writer, and I did not disabuse him of such an agreeable illusion. The real meeting was always more loathsome. I would arrive at 2 a.m, let myself in to the silent public house and proceed to count out on a table the hundreds of pounds destined for the constable's ample pockets. He would arrive at past the hour and count his money noisily and laboriously, more to savour my torment than in the expectation of short change. Each year he would inquire of the health of my wife, like an old family friend, and each year I would answer that she was much the same. But this year, oh, joy of joys! I told him, as he thumbed and slavered over my banknotes, that she was no more. And from that time forth, my payments to him were at an end. He paused for the briefest of moments, as if I had made him stumble in his counting. Then he recommenced with his sordid thumbing, saying, as he did so, that if I failed to pay up, he had enough evidence to put me in the dock for Alice's murder, and that the death of my wife was of no consequence. The deed that followed, though it took not a minute, had been 30 years in my mind. I lifted a wall ornament, a small rusting anchor from a long-drowned ship, walked silently up behind my tormentor, and with blow after blow to his skull, snuffed out his miserable life. So much blood. Opening the window, I saw that the Thames was in full tide below. I tossed his carcass into the flood. Three weeks later, after his bloated body had drifted many times up and down the river with the eddying tide, as if on one final patrol of his earthly domain, he was discovered and recognized by his clothing. The coroner, faced with decaying carrion, recorded an open verdict, and the case was no sooner opened than, like the slamming of that old oak door, it was shut. Forever. Dear reader, if you find this manuscript while I yet live, return it to me in person. Tell no one of its existence, and you shall be well rewarded. If, as I hope, I am long dead, bring it to any publisher, your reward may be greater still. Yours faithfully, Charles Dickens, the 15th of March, 1858.
Just tell me what you want. A house, a car, a planet or two, a mighty ship with a sailing crew. All you have to do is ask. I can give you anything, just tell me what you want. China, crystal, Fabergé eggs, your own private island, a canary that sings, a first-class ticket to the stars and the moon. All you have to do is ask. What it is. High rolling numbers, winning the bet. A bullet that's blank in Russian roulette. A diamond ring that cuts finer than stone. Bankroll notes that know where to go in your pocket. Chicky, chick, chicky, chick, chick, chick. 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 I can give you anything, just tell me what you want. Life eternal, money to spare, a button nose, a recording career. All you have to do is ask. I can give you anything, just tell me what it is. A mink fur coat with crocodile shoes, tiger skin and an ivory tooth, mahogany shelves and turtle soup. Oh no, I'm sorry, endangered species are excluded.